All right, it's not a video that I wanted to make because this stuff is hitting way too close to home, but it is important to make regardless, and I think we need to preempt some stuff. This is an opinion being informed both by my own knee-jerk reactions and also by the counsel of a good friend who I trust, who has had work as a first responder. I give that preamble because we have to talk about Nex Benedict. Now, like the last time I talked about this with Brian Johnson, if you are not in a position where you can comfortably or safely deal with topics about suicide, especially suicide about people who have LGBTQ identities, then it's probably a good idea to click off of this video now, because we're not going to be getting into territory that is great. The territory is going to be murky from top to bottom, and I'm sorry about that, but that is the nature of this stuff. It's, again, one of the reasons why I want to pivot further and further away from politics, is because talking about this stuff is wearing on me and hurting. But, so the story so far that we are dealing with Nex Benedict is that this is a person who, if you did not know, they were a 16-year-old non-binary person who died in Oklahoma, potentially due to trauma relating to being beat in school. Now, the information that we know so far is that Nex dealt with at least a year of this brutality at the school, over and just constantly coming home with bruises, constantly coming home with their face being hurt. And this is a standard that the parents, at least the mother, had to deal with for way too long. And the school, from what I understand, didn't do anything substantial about it. And so it's culminated in a situation where Nex apparently, there are some reports saying that they fling water at someone in some way, shape, or form, and then that led to them being beat in the bathroom. And then, of course, a day later, after being beat in the school bathroom, they ended up dead in hospital. Now, there are some interesting things to note about this scenario, and there's something that's probably going to end up happening that we need to talk about first. So, first of all, the obvious elephant in the room, libs of TikTok. We all know who Chara is. We know the type of stuff that she posts on her TikTok. We know that she tries to drum up people freaking out about trans and non-binary people all the time. This is a normal thing. And there are people, Chaya, and there are people who have been calling for her to be made responsible in some way for effectively stochastic terrorism for the death of this person, because it just is, it strangely turns out that when they talk about areas more often, those areas tend to get things like more bomb threats. It's a weird scenario, very strange. I don't know how that possibly would happen, but the details in this particular scenario, the reason they are so murky, is the police are not currently ruling that this was death related to trauma. The Oklahoma police are not. They are currently ruling instead that this is something that they were having to wait on toxicology reports for first. They're waiting for a lot of other information here. And on the one hand, that is due diligence from the police. On the other hand, there's a prediction that this said first responder friend of mine has made, and I'm worried about it coming true. I'm worried that this death will end up being ruled a suicide, and if it gets ruled a suicide, then dishonest actors like Chaya are going to say, see, it wasn't because they got attacked, it is because they are weak in some way, shape, or form. Things we do know. We know that Nex did not get medical help immediately, and that creates a scenario where somebody feels helpless, where somebody feels like they just want to be just taken away from here. There was a concussion, and they didn't get medical help immediately, and then went to sleep. If the ruling ends up being suicide, then the angle that someone like Chaya will use is this is a weakness, or this is mental illness, or something, anything to sweep it under the rug, anything to make it not seem like they did not incite violence in people, and then those people committed violence on somebody, and now that person's dead. That would be an angle that someone like Chaya would go for. And because they are somebody who is currently being given positions of power for being a fucking YouTuber? Really? You want people like this in position of power? Really? Anyway, if the reports come in instead that this person just died in their sleep, then that would be death from trauma. But we still had the problem where they didn't get medical help immediately during this. That means that as of right now, we're at a crossroads. This death is likely going to end up being a rallying cry for both the right and the left. Not because it should be, no, we shouldn't be rallying around deaths, we should be preventing them. But the right is going to use this scenario, if the reports rule things like suicide or not death by trauma, they're going to rule it, they're going to aim this as the left overreacting at everything. Look, you overreacted at this trauma, but the death wasn't from the trauma. When, if this is a problem of suicide, then this person committed suicide because of the active trauma that was constantly being levied on them, and they didn't want to be here anymore because of that, potentially. If this is a death ruled for some other means, then the trauma complicates things to the point where that death was able to happen. It's like if you are on blood thinners and you fall off of a motorcycle, you break your arm, and suddenly you die of blood loss. Your blood thinners did have something to do with the blood not coagulating, so we would call these things comorbidities, basically. There are plenty of times where deaths by trauma have a delay involved, and that is the printer. We are either going to have the right saying that this is not a death by trauma or this is a death by suicide, if they don't put on tinfoil hat shit to begin with. And then we're going to have people on the left who are going to be trying to, instead of being able to engage in the grieving process, the mourning process, are instead going to have to go on to defense in regards to stuff like this. We should be allowed collectively to be able to mourn when a tragedy happens and not have to think about the political angle that's going to happen with that tragedy. But we don't live in that world, unfortunately. We don't live in a world where we get to do that. We live in a world where an active genocide is happening about trans people in the United States, and I've done videos on this, so if you don't believe me, you're fucking wrong. I'm sorry, you are wrong, and I have evidence to prove it, and I have a video on it. Go watch that video, leave here, and leave your stupid comments somewhere else. By the way, also, if you put any disparaging comments about this scenario in the comment section, I am just going to be deleting them. I don't normally delete comments. I know that YouTube tends to push things, and so I end up looking like I'm deleting comments even when I'm not. I will do that here because I'm sorry, like I said, people want to be able to grieve. They need to be able to grieve. And even if you want to make the argument that Nex Benedict's death doesn't affect you particularly, so why should you grieve? Think about the scenario that you're in. More and more people are coming out as trans every single year. That number is going up. That number is going up because social acceptance for trans people is going up. However, as social acceptance for trans people is going up, persecution is also going up because now people have put targets on their backs, and the right wing in America is nothing but a fucking death cult. You may not know that somebody you care about is trans or non-binary, and they may not feel comfortable enough to tell you, and you may find out when it's too late. But you should not need yourself or a friend or a loved one to be part of one of these identities for you to feel empathy when people have died when they shouldn't have. You should not need any of that. But there are still some people who do. There are still people who like going on the internet and playing devil's advocate until the cows come home, not realizing that they are part of and aiding a system that perpetuates violence against trans people. And not hyperbolic violence, not political violence, none of that shit. No, actual people getting assaulted and getting hurt, as evidenced by... Again, I have a video on the trans genocide happening in the United States. Please go check that out if you are worried or concerned that I might be lying to you in some way, shape, or form. So, right now, we know that any rational person would have taken Nex to a medical institution immediately after this trauma, and yet we live in a world where that did not happen. We have to ask ourselves why. The parents are launching an investigation right now into the Oklahoma school to try to figure out where the root cause of this was, why it happened, who needs to take care of this. So, right now, we are at a standstill. I am worried that this standstill will lead to another wave of violence as the right wing in the United States uses this to go, look, the left is overreacting. Because if you can make it look like the left is overreacting about everything, you can make it to where our conversations about violence happening to people in these spaces, deaths happening in these spaces, trauma in these spaces, you can make it so that all of that seems like weakness, so that all of that seems like something that's not worth considering. And when you do that for long enough, you paint a scenario where no matter what, more people get hurt. Because those people can't effectively communicate when they're being hurt, lest they are seen as weak, lest they are seen as a problem. If only they would go back to the closet, then maybe people wouldn't have to beat them in a bathroom. There's also going to be sociopathic idiots in the comment section of this video and others that are going to say things like that. Oh, if only we went back to the days when these people knew to be afraid, when these people knew to hide, when these people knew not to look abnormal out in public. When that happens, and it will, when people like Chaya, Libs of TikTok, go on and try to defend themselves, do not let them. They are complicit in this. They are the types of people who make their money and their fame off of the suffering of others. Exclusively. They are not bringing to light important information. They are profiteering off of death. That is all they have done for years, and that is what they will continue to do. These are the Michael Knowles, the Matt Walshes. These are the Chayas, the Libs of TikToks. These are the people whose entire point in existence, from start to end, is make money because people suffer, while also creating the scenario where people suffer more because it makes them more money. And I can't move myself away from that cynical position. If they try to say this death was not because of trauma related to the beating, point out the years' worth of abuse that Nex had to go through to lead to this happening. Point out the medical negligence that happens oftentimes when minority groups are oppressed. Point out the myriad of actual factual scenarios that have happened. And don't just do it in a private conversation. Do it out in public. Shout these fuckers down. Create a scenario where anytime somebody says something disparaging about this event, about Nex, it creates a whirlwind that is incontrovertible and incredibly inconvenient for them every single time. This is not a scenario to gently chide people in private for. This is a scenario to make people a fool of for trying to profiteer off of it. But that is as far as I can get in there. I do hope that the families and everybody else who is involved in the grieving process of this can find some time to heal while this turns into a storm. And I am hoping that I did not push anybody else who was in my audience too far in this particular video. But these are my thoughts on this scenario, and this is again informed by people who do know what they're talking about and are talking with me about strategy and what's probably going to happen next. So let me know what you guys think. Comments are right down there, and I will see you all in hopefully a video where I can have a little more fun and a little less of this.